We're happy to be a part of this historic event, the peaceful transition of power. We, walking around the nation's capital, we're reminded of the sacrifices that went into building this country from the founding fathers and everybody else that's been a part of it. And, supporting the Constitution, being part of a nation of laws, it's a real privilege.
That was Captain Belknap, who is the Public Affairs Officer for the Utah Task Force, speaking to ABC4 News on Monday about deploying to Washington, D.C. to assist with security for President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration ceremony tomorrow. Welcome to our In Focus discussion tonight on President Trump's last day in office. We are exploring three angles tonight, starting with our local service members who are assisting with security measures in our nation's capital. Joining us live via Zoom from Washington, D.C. is Lieutenant Colonel Workman with the 204th Maneuver Enhancement Brigade of the Utah National Guard. Lieutenant Colonel, thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight. It's good to see you.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here, Rosie. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's start at the beginning. When did the Utah National Guard receive the request to provide assistance in D.C. for the week leading up to President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration ceremony?
That's a great place to start, Rosie, I think, because it's a great story. We actually had very short notice on the 12th of January. The governor authorized the Utah National Guard to support the presidential inauguration through a request from the National Command Authority here.
And for those who are just now following this story, could you help us recap the logistics? When did the Utah National Guard begin traveling to D.C. and how many troops do we currently have out there? And do you know how long you will stay before returning home?
Those are some great questions. So it goes back to what I mentioned before with that quick notice coming into this mission. The logistics were absolutely amazing. You know, we have around 400 soldiers in here from the state of Utah to augment this mission of around 25,000 Utah National Guardsmen in our nation's capital. And the bulk of those soldiers come from southern Utah, from the 2nd Battalion, 222nd Field Artillery. Obviously, we have airmen and soldiers from multiple units supporting that effort. However, if you think about going from St. George to 3 days later, we had all 400 soldiers on ground here in Washington, D.C. It was an incredible combination of teamwork between the Air National Guard, the Joint Staff, Utah State Headquarters, as well as an immense show of sacrifice and support from our soldiers, families, and employers.
As service members, that's one of the things that we admire about you guys is your ability to just move very quickly, sometimes at just a moment's notice. What are some of the duties that the Utah National Guard will be assisting with out there in Washington, D.C.?
There's actually a wide range of duties that we're involved in, but all of those duties support the safety and security of the events here. As soldiers, we took an oath to support and defend the Constitution, and our role here is to support all aspects of the process. So whether people are here in celebration of the inauguration or exercising their First Amendment constitutional rights, we're here to help ensure that that all happens safely.
Do you remember a time when the Utah National Guard deployed for an event similar to this one?
You know, I do actually, because I'm kind of one of the old guys, so I've been around a while. And I actually remember a very similar mission in the 2002 Winter Olympics. That being said, we do have elements from the Air National Guard there in Utah who have been part of many presidential inaugurations.
Now, with the preparations and the amount of personnel that are out there, what's the overall feeling amongst you and your colleagues? Do you feel confident and at ease about the security measures that are in place?
That is a great segue, actually. I think if I was to choose two adjectives, I think it would be the one you used, which is confident, as well as proud. It's a historic event and an amazing opportunity for us to be here and to be part of that. the preponderance of our soldiers, this is their first time in the nation's capital, and to be able to see all of these iconic sites that represent the uniform that we wear has been a really impressive thing to see among these young people. And then the other side of that is that confidence. You know, we are confident in our training and our abilities to do what we need to do. And furthermore, we're confident in the American people.
All right, Lieutenant Colonel, we have about 30 seconds left. One more question I'd like to ask you. What do the streets of Washington, D.C. look like right now? We've seen some photos, but aside from the security personnel, is it essentially a ghost town?
You know, we don't get off of the capital region much here due to our duties. And so here it's obviously very quiet because of the security measures in place. That being said, all around us, life is going on. People are walking their dogs, riding bikes, and a lot of people are stopping to by express their gratitude to our soldiers for being here and helping them feel safer in their own neighborhoods close to the Capitol.
I am glad to hear you guys are getting a warm welcome from the folks in D.C. You've been hearing from Lieutenant Colonel Workman with the 204th Maneuver Enhancement Brigade of the Utah National Guard. Lieutenant Colonel, thank you for your service. Be safe out there.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for staying with us for our second In Focus discussion tonight on President Trump's last day in office. Today, President Trump prepared to issue more than 100 pardons before he exits the White House. The final list with all the names are set to be released tomorrow, which may include some of his allies. Joining us now live via Zoom is Professor Paul Cassell with the S.J. Quinney College of Law at the University of Utah. Professor, it's good to see you. Thanks for taking the time to join us tonight.
You bet, Rosie.
I'd like to take it back to the basics. Let's start with, what exactly does a pardon from President Trump mean?
Well, President Trump is the highest executive officer in the federal government, so he has the power to essentially wipe out any federal prosecution that has already led to a conviction. He can even preemptively wipe out any possibility of a prosecution by issuing a preemptive pardon. But let's remember, those are limited to the federal system. He doesn't have any authority, of course, over any state prosecutions that may be underway.
That's a good distinction to make. A question that many people have asked is, who can President Trump pardon? And also, can President Trump pardon himself? Is there a limit on how many people he can pardon?
Well, let's take that second question. There is no limit. It's not like he gets a dozen and then he's done. He has unlimited pardon power in the Constitution, and so if he wanted to pardon 100 people, 200, 1,000, he would have that authority to do so. The pardon power also doesn't seem to be limited when you look at the text of the Constitution. Constitutional scholars have been debating whether someone could pardon themselves, but I don't think we're going to get see a presidential pardon tomorrow that will raise those issues.
Now, this next question I'm about to ask you, obviously it's too late for this situation to happen, but let's say you and I were conversating last week. Could Vice President Mike Pence pardon President Trump if he had resigned or if he had been removed from office by impeachment or under the 25th Amendment?
Well, whoever is the president wields the pardon power. So if somehow some vice president were ever to take over, the vice president would then become the president and have the ability to issue a pardon. Most famously, I think some of us remember Vice President Gerald Ford, who became president and then very controversially and famously ultimately issued a pardon to now retired President Nixon. So whoever has the pardon power, whoever's the acting president, wields that power.
How do we avoid, or can we avoid, abuse of power when it comes to pardoning? We know that President Trump has used this power to grant clemency to people convicted of crimes related to his presidential campaign. So is there a way that we can prevent this power from being abused?
Well, it may also be an abuse of power not to pardon someone. Somebody has to make the call one way or another on whether the pardons are justified or not. And the framers of our Constitution decided that one person was going to be the head of the executive branch, the President of the United States. So we rely on the good judgment of the President to execute the laws and to make decisions about pardons. And so in this case, we have to rely on the good judgment of whoever the President is.
How has President Trump used the clemency power so far compared to U.S. presidents in the past?
Well, I think one of the things that everyone agrees on is that he's essentially bypassed the Justice Department, which in the past has set up a process for evaluating pardons. He's essentially centralized the process in his own office, the office of the president there. And that certainly is something that he's entitled to do. And I think people will be debating, would it be better to have a more routinized process that works through the Justice Department that, for example, may provide an opportunity for victims of crime and others to get some input into the process? Or is it better to have unrestricted power in the office of the president? Those are both ways in which the pardon power can be implemented. And President Trump, as he has on many other things, has decided to essentially grab the bull by the horns and make the decisions on his own.
Professor, who can we expect to be on that list of pardons that will be released tomorrow?
Well, I think one thing we'll see is he's already pardoned issued a pardon in a case that I know a lot about, Weldon Angeles, who got a 55-year sentence for carrying a gun to a couple of marijuana deals, kind of a case where I think many people would believe that the sentence did not fit the crime. And so I think we're going to see a number of cases like that. I think we also may see some cases that are connected with what the president has characterized as an abuse of power, connected with the Russian investigation that has gone on for so long. So I think we're going to see a mixture of a variety of different kinds of people who appear on the list.
All right, we have time for one more question. Professor, I'm wondering, what do you see with the future of this pardoning power? Has there ever been any controversy surrounding it? What do you expect to see moving forward from here?
Well, people can always debate whether the pardon power has been appropriately used or not. President Clinton did something very similar on the last day in his office, where he pardoned, I think, around 200 people, and some of those were persons that law enforcement and others thought should not have been pardoned. But that's always, I guess, the way our system works is when we put power in the hands of whether it's the president or senators or representatives or justices on the Supreme Court, the public's always entitled to second guess those opinions or second guess those decisions and express their own opinion. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of debate about some of the people that are on the list. What will not be debated is that the president does have the right to issue these pardons for anyone who's been convicted of a federal crime or could potentially be prosecuted for a federal crime.
All right, you've been hearing from Professor Paul Cassell with the S.J. Quinney College of Law at the University of Utah. Professor, thank you so much for carving out time tonight to share your expertise with us.
Glad to be here.
This was the most serious presidential crime in the history of the United States of America, the most dangerous crime by a president ever committed against the United States.
Impeaching him after he leaves office is not only unconstitutional, from a Republican point of view, it would destroy our party.
That was Maryland Representative Jamie Raskin and South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham responding to President Trump's second impeachment trial. Welcome to our third and final In Focus discussion tonight on President Trump's last day in office. Shortly before exiting the White House, Trump became the only president to ever be impeached twice. But the trial will obviously take place after he completes his full 4-year term. So what does this mean for his future and our country's? Joining us now live via Zoom is Professor RonNell Andersen Jones with the S.J. Quinney College of Law at the University of Utah. Professor, thank you for being here tonight and welcome back to the show.
Happy to be here.
Professor, a common question that we've heard is, why are our nation's lawmakers pushing for a second impeachment trial for President Trump? What would that accomplish?
Yeah, I think that the senators who have supported this have given two separate motivations. The first is that an impeachment is a precursor to a vote that could ultimately preclude President Trump from seeking office again, disqualifying him from seeking federal office. And those who support this say that some of the underlying behaviors that are articulated in the article of impeachment, things like undermining a fair election, disputing ongoing disputes or falsehoods about that, and encouraging violence, are things that might continue to exist if Trump is looking ahead to an additional campaign in the future. A second, I think, more personal reason that some of them have suggested to us that they feel strongly about this is that behaviors that were involved in the article of impeachment are things they experienced firsthand. These are folks who were huddled in the Capitol during the siege and who have sort of spoken about the strong feelings they have about what they saw as an attack on the center of democracy and their perception that Trump played a central role in that. And they have concerns about making a strong statement to the wider world in that space.
Right, so this sounds like this is mainly preventative measures. Do the Democrats have a better chance with succeeding in impeachment this time, since they will hold the majority in the Senate and the House?
It's true that the makeup of the Senate is different this time around, but only by a very slender margin. There is a tie between the two parties in the Senate, a tie that we expect Vice President Kamala Harris would be the tiebreaker too. And the impeachment provisions of the Constitution require more than a bare majority. For the conviction here, the constitutional text says that we need a 2/3 majority. This would mean that we would need 17 Republicans to join if all of the Democrats voted in that way. We don't have good signals yet for sure about whether those 17 exist or not. We have seen some hints, including recent comments from Mitch McConnell, the former majority leader, who suggested that he might at least be considering it, and others may well follow his lead, but I think it's far too soon to say whether that kind of 2/3 group would exist.
Now, this is a question I know that you and I and my colleagues have gotten multiple times. Is it constitutional to hold this trial? Because this will be the first time that a president is facing impeachment after leaving office. Now, Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas argued that the Senate doesn't have the authority to hold a trial once Trump has left office. So what do you think?
Yeah, this is the question of the day, and there are scholars on both sides of this issue. There are some who say, no, it's not constitutional. The text of the Constitution makes reference to impeaching the president, and he won't be the president once he's left the office. And if the main purpose of it is to remove someone who continues to be an ongoing threat by holding the office, that threat will also obviously no longer exist. There are others who feel strongly that it is constitutional to move forward and that the precedent suggests this. And they argue that the primary purpose of the impeachment clause isn't necessarily removal, but that disqualification that we just discussed. And if we didn't have this possibility of impeaching someone after they left office, every person who faced the possibility of impeachment could just immediately resign and avoid that disqualification consequence. And in fact, there is one case on the books from the 1870s of a Secretary of War who attempted to do just that. Impeachment was looming. He quickly resigned. The House moved forward with impeaching him, and the Senate moved forward to consider the conviction. They ultimately acquitted, but the suggestion is that as a historical matter, the Senate thinks that it can move forward under those circumstances. So we don't have a great answer. We have tensions on both sides of the debate.
Professor, we have about 30 seconds left. I wonder if we can squeeze this question in. Will the new President Joe Biden be able to accomplish his agenda while this trial goes on?
That's a major tension. There have been some suggestions that there will be trouble getting all of the cabinet members in place because the Senate would at a minimum have to split its day between these confirmations and impeachment. It's a real tension for people on both sides of the aisle.
All right, you've been hearing from Professor RonNell Andersen Jones with the S.J. Quinney College of Law at the University of Utah. Professor, it's always great to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us again tonight for an insightful discussion.
Great to see you.